Before she died, Amy Winehouse said something that would echo like a prophecy. "I'm not a girl trying to be a star. I'm just trying to sing." But fame was a monster that didn't care about what she wanted. It devoured her, note by note, until the voice that once lit up the world became the sound of her own undoing. In 2008, at the height of her fame, Amy's voice could stop a crowd. She had that rare power, the kind that made people believe she'd lived every word she sang. But behind the stage lights, her life was collapsing in ways that even her closest friends couldn't control. Her addiction was no longer just a secret. It was part of her public identity. Every headline screamed her pain. Every photograph turned into proof of her destruction. Yet, the tragedy of Amy Winehouse wasn't just about addiction. It was about a system, a music industry, a hungry media, and a world that wanted her broken because her pain made better songs. Behind the eyeliner, the tattoos, and the defiance, there was a girl who only wanted to make music, but whose honesty became her curse. This is not a story about a singer who lost her way. It's about what happens when a woman's art, truth, and vulnerability are sold to the world. And when the same world turns its back once she's no longer profitable. Because Amy didn't just die from what she took. She died from what was taken from her. London, early 2000s. The air was thick with rebellion and reinvention. Pop music was glittery, polished, predictable, until a young woman with a towering beehive and a voice from another era broke through the noise. Amy Winehouse wasn't made for the 2000s. She sounded like she had been pulled straight from a smoky jazz bar in 1963. Her voice carried the ache of Billie Holiday and the soul of Etta James. Raw, unfiltered, timeless. Born in Southgate, North London, Amy was surrounded by jazz from the beginning. Her father, Mitch, adored Sinatra and Tony Bennett. Her mother, Janice, played the softer ballads that filled the house on quiet Sundays. From those sounds, Amy learned something most singers never do, that music wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty. And honesty would become her most dangerous weapon. When she released Frank in 2003, the world wasn't ready for her. It was bold, confessional, and sharp-tongued. A young woman calling out the men who hurt her, the industry that confused her, and the fame she never asked for. Critics hailed her as a prodigy, a poet in eyeliner and jazz chords. But Amy didn't want to be a celebrity. She wanted to be an artist, and that difference would soon destroy her. By 2006, Back to Black turned her into a global phenomenon. Rehab wasn't just a hit, it was an anthem of defiance. Ironically, it was also a confession, a cry for help the world chose to dance to instead of understand. With its dark Motown sound and brutally personal lyrics, Back to Black became the soundtrack of a generation fascinated by Amy's chaos. But success came with a price. Her every move was hunted by paparazzi. The tabloids followed her from clubs to courtrooms, documenting her pain like a soap opera. Even her love life, especially her toxic relationship with Blake Fielder-Civil, became a twisted public obsession. Together they were seen as doomed lovers, the Sid and Nancy of modern music. Yet beneath the scandals, Amy was building something profound. A legacy of emotional truth that few artists could ever match. She was the rare kind of artist who didn't perform pain. She lived it, then turned it into melody. But while her songs climbed the charts, her life was quietly falling apart behind closed doors. And that is where the real story begins, not in her fame, but in the slow erosion of everything that made her human. At first, Amy Winehouse's rise felt almost accidental. She didn't fit the mold of early 2000s pop, no choreographed routines, no airbrushed perfection, no corporate polish. She showed up with messy eyeliner, a guitar, and a voice that could break your heart in 3 seconds. People didn't just listen to Amy, they felt her. By the time Back to Black hit the airwaves, she had become a cultural phenomenon. Her lyrics weren't abstract poetry. They were diary entries turned into confessionals. You know I'm no good. Tears dry on their own. Love is a losing game. Every line carried the sting of truth. Audiences connected with her because she wasn't pretending. But that authenticity also exposed her deepest wounds to a world that didn't know how to handle them. The press called her a genius. Then within months, they began calling her a disaster. Fame came fast. And with it came everything she feared. Pressure, intrusion, addiction, and betrayal. The very industry that celebrated her talent also pushed her toward collapse. Concert promoters demanded performances even when she could barely stand. Photographers waited outside her home, shouting insults to provoke a reaction. Tabloids printed lies and half-truths that turned her breakdowns into morning entertainment. And then came Blake Fielder-Civil, a relationship that burned through Amy's life like a cigarette left too close to a curtain. They met in 2005, fell into instant obsession, and spiraled into chaos. Blake introduced Amy to a darker world: drugs, volatility, and emotional warfare. To her, he was both muse and poison. He inspired Back to Black, but he also dragged her deeper into the shadows that would consume her. "Without him," she once said, "I wouldn't have written the album, but I'd probably be alive." The public didn't see the private version of Amy, the girl who scribbled lyrics at 3 a.m., the one who begged her friends to help her stay clean, the one who still called her mother every day. What they saw was the spectacle, the drunken stage appearances, the canceled tours, the haunted eyes and paparazzi flashes. Even her greatest triumph, winning 5 Grammy Awards in 2008, was bittersweet. She wasn't allowed to attend the ceremony in Los Angeles because of her visa issues, so she accepted the awards live via satellite from London. When her name was announced, she smiled, thanked everyone, and whispered into the microphone, "This is for London." But behind that smile was exhaustion. Just hours later, she retreated backstage and broke down in tears. The higher she rose, the more fragile she became. Each headline, each photo, each cruel joke chipped away at her sanity. The people who loved her music were unknowingly watching her slow collapse, one applause at a time. Amy Winehouse had everything she'd ever dreamed of, and yet she had never felt more alone. By 2010, Amy Winehouse was no longer living, she was surviving. The woman who once roared through smoky jazz halls was now trapped in a cycle of self-destruction that felt almost scripted by the world watching her. The media had turned her pain into entertainment, and the more she suffered, the more headlines she made. Behind the chaos was a truth that few dared to confront. Amy's downfall wasn't inevitable, it was engineered. Her management pushed her to perform when she was clearly unwell. In June 2011, just 1 month before her death, she was forced to begin a European tour. The opening concert in Belgrade became a viral disaster. She stumbled on stage, slurred her words, and forgot lyrics. The crowd booed. The media mocked her mercilessly. But what most people didn't know was that Amy had begged to cancel that tour. She didn't want to go. She wasn't ready. Her team, desperate to profit one more time, ignored her cries for help. Those who were close to her, like her goddaughter Dionne Bromfield, later said Amy had been trying to get better. She had gone sober for weeks. She had started recording new material again. But she was fragile, and sobriety had left her face to face with something she could no longer escape, herself. For years, the alcohol had silenced her pain, the loneliness, the guilt, the toxic love that had defined her. When she tried to live without it, those emotions returned like ghosts, haunting every quiet moment. Her friend and producer Salam Remy described it simply: Amy's greatest enemy was herself, but her battlefield was fame. The world had turned her heartbreak into a business, and when the music stopped, there was nothing left for her to stand on. On July 23, 2011, Amy was found dead in her Camden home. The coroner's report revealed a blood alcohol level 5 times the legal driving limit, enough to stop her heart. But those numbers don't tell the real story. The real cause was exhaustion, pressure, isolation, a system that sold her tragedy before her art. In the aftermath, the hypocrisy was staggering. The same tabloids that had humiliated her now printed glossy tributes calling her a lost angel. Her father gave interviews. Her label re-released her albums. The public mourned her as if they hadn't all taken part in her slow execution. But the truth remains. Amy didn't simply die of addiction. She died of being watched, of being consumed, of having her pain turned into profit. And in the echo of her voice, through songs like Back to Black and Love is a Losing Game, we can still hear her warning that fame without love is just another kind of death. When we look back at Amy Winehouse's story, It's easy to romanticize it. The tortured artist, the beautiful ruin, the girl who sang her pain until it killed her. But Legends and Secrets does not see tragedy as art. We see it as evidence of how fame can destroy the very souls it claims to celebrate. Amy was never just a headline or a cautionary tale. She was a mirror reflecting how our culture feeds on vulnerability. The media turned her breakdown into daily entertainment. The audience laughed, judged, and shared. We called it celebrity gossip, but it was something darker. A ritual of collective cruelty disguised as fascination. Every generation has its sacrifice. In the 1960s it was Judy Garland. In the 1970s Janis Joplin. In the 1990s Kurt Cobain. And in the 2000s it was Amy Winehouse. Each of them carried unbearable truth through their art, and each of them was punished for it. What makes Amy's case especially haunting is that her tragedy was preventable. She didn't need to die. She needed protection, not profit, compassion, not cameras. But the system that surrounded her was designed to keep her functioning just enough to perform, even if it meant killing her spirit. We often say, the show must go on. But maybe it shouldn't, not when the performer is breaking. Even after her death, the cycle continued. Posthumous albums, documentaries, and biopics tried to honor her legacy. Yet many of them reopened the wound she tried to close. They sold her image once more, the eyeliner, the chaos, the tragic genius, but rarely the truth. That Amy Winehouse was funny, gentle, generous, and painfully self-aware. So when we listen to her songs today, perhaps we should listen differently. Not as consumers of a legend, but as witnesses of a warning. Amy once said, "If I heard someone like me, I'd buy the record and learn all the words and sing them back to them." She didn't realize we'd be singing them back after she was gone. Her story forces us to ask, how many more voices will we lose before we learn that fame without empathy is just another form of exploitation? This is not just Amy's story, it's the story of every artist whose honesty becomes their undoing. And maybe it's also ours. There's an old video of Amy Winehouse, long before the chaos began. She's sitting in a small London studio, barefoot, laughing between takes. The microphone hangs loosely in front of her, and she hums a few notes almost shyly. There's no makeup, no crowd, no pressure. Just that voice, pure and unguarded. For a fleeting moment you see the real Amy. The girl who loved music more than fame. The girl who sang not to be heard, but to be understood. That's the Amy the world rarely saw. The one who could turn heartbreak into poetry, addiction into melody, and loneliness into something almost beautiful. Every lyric she wrote came from the deepest part of herself, and every song she left behind still carries her heartbeat. It's strange how the world remembers people like her. We build statues, we buy albums, we quote their pain, yet we never seem to hear what they were really saying. Amy's songs weren't just about love and loss. They were about survival, about trying to stay human in a world that demands performance. If you listen closely to Back to Black, Beyond the Brass, and Rhythm, you can hear her confession that she was always running from something she couldn't escape: herself, her fame, and the silence that followed every song. And in that silence she disappeared. But maybe that's where she found peace. In the one place where no one could photograph her, label her, or sell her story. In the quiet that music always promised her. Her voice still lingers, smoky and eternal, reminding us of what she once said: "Life's short. Anything could happen." And it usually does. Some stories are never revealed. But now you know.